And at 12 to 8, as we do this time every Friday, time to say g'day to Dubbo Regional Council Mayor Matthew Dickerson. Good morning.
Good morning, and let me just say before I start, thank you to the Ambos. Today is Ambulance Appreciation Day.
Oh, wow.
And I do love the fact that we've got people out there in our community that are prepared to go and be the first responders, and that applies to more than just Ambos, but again, today is Ambulance Appreciation Day, but people who are prepared to go out there and do things that I personally don't want to do. We've got fireys out there, we've got SES, we've got VRA, we've got police out there, and we've got ambulance out there, and we are very lucky in this country because we've got some great first responders. So thank you to the Ambos out there.
Yeah, a big shout out to the Ambos today. And yeah, look, thanks to everybody in those areas that, you know, they're there for us.
When there's danger, people run away, and we've got some first responders that run towards
it. Now, a number of meetings held, 3 meetings held last night, Dubbo Regional Council. Infrastructure planning and environment. Good value of building approvals for the month of August.
Yeah, that's right. And if you look at so far year to date, so we've only had 2 months in this financial year, but there's $19.5 million worth of building approvals, up 78% over the same period last year. Now again, let's not get too excited about that. It's only 2 months, but it's a good 2 months. And then when you look at the overall approvals for the year, and you've got a graph sitting there in front of you, it hit its peak way back in the last year of Dubbo City Council. So that was in the 2015-2016 year. So the amalgamation happened on the 12th of May 2016. After that, which was interesting, building approvals started to drop off a bit, and that was when we had the amalgamated figures. So you would have expected it to go up a little bit because you had Wellington added in there, but it's gone down, and then it's gone slowly trending back up. And if you look at this year, now again, this is extrapolated from only 2 months, but if you look at this year, if we keep going at the same rate so far, we'll have the highest year ever for building approvals. So that'll finally go back past that 2015-2016 year.
Now, you haven't got your I Love Dubbo t-shirt on today, Matthew, but what does that tell you about Dubbo? Hey?
Well, I heard a rumour, Iain, that all these people are moving to Dubbo, all these houses that are being built for people to come and listen to 2DU. So that might be the story.
I think they love you as mayor.
Maybe that's it.
But that's really good news. Now, the council has taken a look at some of the flood damage treatment options for the Duke of Wellington Bridge.
So we've made, now remember this was committee meetings last night,
Yes.
So I'm about to say we've made a decision. We haven't made a decision that's a resolution. The committees make a recommendation through to the council meeting. So the recommendation at this stage from the committees through to council in 2 weeks' time, when the final resolution will occur, is to try and repair the Duke of Wellington, not so much the bridge, but the embankment leading up to it, and that's on the Bell River, and get that to the stage where it's operational again and basically secure that bank so it will withstand future water flows through there, but not for us to cover the cost of that. About $21.6 million is the cost for that. We simply don't have that money, but what we're going to do is try and pursue that with some different funds that are out there, mainly disaster recovery funds from the state government. So we'll pursue that again if that goes through in 2 weeks' time as a resolution of council, so that the aim will be to get that bridge up and operational again.
And there was also a report detailing drought security projects currently being undertaken by council there.
So this is going on the back of the money, mainly the $30 million that was spent by the last council, which has mostly been spent on the drought resilience. So the state government gave $30 million to the last council to help with drought resilience. Now, some of that money's been spent on things like buying additional bore licenses and then running pipelines through. If we got to the stage where we were at the last drought, where the Macquarie River flow was minimal, we were down, if you remember, to 1% at Barnard Dam. Seems like a long time ago with the water that we've had since then. But when you get down to that level and the Macquarie River almost isn't flowing, we want to be able to rely on our bores. Now, at the moment, we've only got about 3,000 megalitres or 3 gigs of water that we can get from our bores. We might need, in a very restricted year, we might need, say, 6,000 or 7,000 megalitres of water. So 3,000 is not enough, obviously. So we aim to continue to increase the amount of bore water we can use, and then essentially get to the stage where we could be drought resilient. We've got a fairly big reservoir there too, don't forget. The weir, the whole idea of the weir that was built back in the 1930s was to give us a reservoir to be able to keep drawing water from in low flows along the river. So we've got a reservoir there, so it's unlikely we need to go to 100% from bores, but we certainly do want to go to more than 3 gigalitres from the bores.
That leads on from our first topic. If more people keep coming to Dubbo, there's going to be more demand, isn't there?
And if I was looking to move to somewhere and I was going to move somewhere where I knew they had good water security and I knew that I'd be able to have water despite whatever the weather was doing, then I'd feel more confidence in going there. So that's all part of that long-term confidence.
Now, also under discussion there last night, the number of concepts for South Bridge.
So we've seen before, and this is going back to the last council again, various concepts were put forward for another bridge in Dubbo, but this is towards the south, and this is more for local traffic. So we're not talking about something like the new Dubbo Bridge being built by the state government, which is obviously mainly for highway traffic. We're not talking about another LH Ford Bridge, which is a combination, but we're talking about more local traffic. There were a number of options put forward, and the last council did discuss those, and you may remember some of those discussions in the media. I'm sure that you saw some of those discussions in the media at the time. We've narrowed it down now to two options, option 2 and 3 that were in a previous report put out by GHD. Essentially, one of those options will come from Mayoral Road, and there'll be an intersection there at Mayoral Road on the highway, which will then take it down through across and feed up into Tamworth Street. Or the other option would be where the golf club entrance is, an entrance from there or an intersection there, and then take that across the Macquarie River and then back up Tamworth Street. We've ruled out going through Lady Cutler and cutting off Lady Cutler, so it's more about taking that traffic up into Tamworth Street. And then essentially from there, we're looking at two options. We'll develop a business case, but those two options, you're talking about 39 million for one option, 32 million for the other option. The business case won't be to pursue funding yet for those, because again, that's outside our budget. It'll be to look at which of those two options is best. Once we go through a process there, obviously that will involve extensive public consultation. Then we'll go out and start looking for funding sources, and that will be hopefully a combination of state and federal money that we'll get for that bridge. But we're a long way from that yet. We've got to get the decision, first of all, from the community about which way to go.
Also last night, the Culture and Community Committee meeting, the public art strategy. What's happening there?
Yeah, well, this is really good. I think there are many people who do want to have public art and see more public art around the community. We have examples of that privately already where people do create some public art. That might be a mural on the side of a building, for example. We've got some public art in our rhinos, but we want to have a policy in place that encourages and also puts some parameters, some guidelines around it. It'll mainly refer to artwork or art that is put up in public places. Because if you've got a building that you want to put a nice mural on the side of, within reason, you can do what you think is reasonable there. Again, there are some parameters around that, but this is really about encouraging that public art. This is a policy that's out on public display, asking for commentary on it, and then as we keep developing that further, we'll get to the point where it'll be a final policy of council, and then hopefully some people will say, I'd really like to put some public art somewhere, and here's a policy to tell people what they can do with it.
Also to the Corporate Services Committee there was an audit of signs across the urban areas of Dubbo Regional Council LGA. Some interesting findings.
Well, it was interesting. Councillor Ivey brought this forward as a notice of motion because he'd noticed a couple of signs that were a bit out of date or looked a bit tired, and then thought, I wonder if there's some central database at council with all of our signs, and it turns out there wasn't. So he asked in a notice of motion for us to do, or for council staff to do an audit on all our signs, and they audited over 500 signs, found about 265 of those had things that were wrong, and they might have been things like Dubbo City Council on there, might have been things that by order of general manager, we don't have a general manager anymore, might have had even Tony Kelly's name on some of these signs. Not many of those signs were found like that. Some of them were incorrect, some of them were very faded and old. So now that we know about those, there'll be a process that we'll go through to essentially replace some of those signs, update some of those signs, maybe even remove some of those signs. Maybe some of those signs aren't needed anymore. But that was a good idea by Councillor Ivey to bring that forward. And now we've got that information, we'll have to work out how we deal with that.
Obviously, a bit of a job there pulling all that together, but I think that would be worthwhile doing. I know other councils do have a database of those sorts of things.
And that'll probably be developed on the back of that, develop that further then with having a repository, a database of all that information and keep that up to date. But we even found some little anomalies, or when I say we, our staff found some little anomalies. One sign, for example, had in certain hours of the day, it was a loading zone. In certain hours of the day, it was 1 hour parking, but they covered some parts of the same day. So if you pulled up to that sign, you look at it and you'd say, oh, hold on, is this a loading zone now or is this a 1 hour parking? I'm confused. So just things like that we picked up. And there's also a wayfinding project that we're doing around Trackaroli at the moment to replace a lot of the signs around there and make sure that people who use that regularly, and visitors use it as well, can have more information around Trackaroli.
Just really quickly here in the Mayoral segment, it might be worth mentioning today is the 19th anniversary of the death of Tony McGrain, who served as Dubbo Mayor from 1991 to 1999. I mentioned this on this day. Of course, he went on to be the independent MP for Dubbo. Did you have much to do with Tony at all?
I didn't when he was mayor, but I certainly did when he was the member for Dubbo, and certainly dealt with him a fair bit then. And very good man, very good for Dubbo, certainly involved in Gilgandra before here.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a nice little note. I didn't actually realise that anniversary. Nice little note to say thanks to Tony McGrain.
Matthew Dickerson, as always, thank you for coming in. Have a great weekend, and we'll catch up with you again next week.